Cyber crime is a $10.5 trillion problem. They will come through. And so when they do get through, what is that last line of defense?
You would just, warm up and just talk. But we already know each other, so.
We do.
Yeah, for how many years now?
It's probably approaching 10 years.
At least, yeah. So Jonathan and I worked together in Los Angeles on a case that we cannot talk about.
Yeah, that's right. We can't talk about, but it does take us back to Japan.
Yes.
So there was that connection.
Yes. So we're in Tokyo right now. Once again, I'm at the Mandarin Oriental.
You get to stay at nice places, don't you? You live at the Mandarin Oriental?
Well, I have an office here, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. And I just have a tab. Kind of like those, I feel like Frank Sinatra in Las Vegas or something. They just, yeah. They know, everybody knows my name. Just, yeah, they think I stay here. No, but you're staying here. And I interviewed Chris at the same place. Beautiful view. But we have the night view now, which is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely beautiful. But yeah, we were working on a case together, doing legal work. And I remember sitting in the boardroom one time and you said, I'm thinking of starting a company, guys. And I was like, okay, cool.
Well, that's how conversations start, right?
Yep.
In that proverbial water cooler conversation.
Mm-hmm. What if?
What if? Yeah.
Yep.
And then I think that's where it started.
Yep.
They say, well, what if? And we should one day do this. And
mm-hmm.
I couldn't just sit and just stay there with what ifs.
Mm-hmm.
It took a lot of applications and failures. Oh, that was fun. Yeah, that takes us back.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And then I remember coming to Japan, but before that, we were talking and you said, do you know anybody who wants to go to Japan? And I said, yeah, me. And you said, no, I need you in LA. I was like, no, I want to go to Japan. And then finally, I think it was May 6th, 2014. And I remember because May 7th is my birthday.
Oh, okay.
And you called me up and said, hey, can you go to Japan? I was like, yeah. So that night I got my ticket. The next day I was in Tokyo.
It was within 24 hours.
Yep. I was there. And I think I landed at 9 p.m. Or no. Got to the hotel at 9 p.m., fell asleep, woke up the next day, and went to work.
Wow. Yeah, that's right. I remember that. I didn't get to go. I think I sent a team.
You did. You sent a team of us and I think we had somebody remote in China or something. Yep.
That's right. I do remember that.
For a short time.
Yeah, she didn't last. I don't know if it was.
I don't remember.
Yeah, it didn't last that long.
Yeah.
But I do remember that.
The team, I think it was going to be, first it was like 3 months and then it turned out to be 2 weeks. And then they said, wait, we got more work. And I was motivated to stay in Japan. So.
And you haven't left since then.
Nope. I mean, I've left the country, but
that was a yeah.
Yep. May 2014. I've been here ever since.
So I feel kind of responsible for you.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel kind of grateful for you.
I was grateful that you came. I was happy because that was one of our first large contract that we landed. Mm-hmm. And that was the business that a few years before that we were thinking about and talking about.
That was the water cooler conversation that came to life.
That's right. Yeah.
And then it became a project in Tokyo, which completely changed my life. Mm-hmm. So,
because those days we would get into the office at 5:30 a.m.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
I had a house. I had a studio in downtown LA in Skid Row. And did I walk to work? I had to walk to work. Yeah, I walked to work. I think it was 5 a.m.
Down Skid Row.
I mean, how else would I have gotten? I didn't have a car.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, like, how did I end up at the office? Maybe I was like 2 or 3 blocks away.
Okay.
I can't remember, but I knew I walked.
Yeah.
I remember walking, but for some reason I felt safe. And this was almost.
This is what?
2012,
2013.
I think something like that.
Yeah. Long before LA's changed.
Yeah, I think downtown LA is much different.
Mm-hmm. And I remember going down Angel's Flight and we would go down to the juice place.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And get a juice. And I knew nothing about nutrition, so I would just say, just give me whatever he's having.
The goddess of greens.
Yes. That was a great place. Great place.
Yeah, that was fun. That was our lunch, our liquid lunch. Because we would start the morning at 5:30, and I think we must have billed 12, 13 hours a day. And I think 12 was probably the max, right?
I think it was max,
they said once we hit 12 or more in California, you start to hit double time or something like that. And so I know they told us, do not go more than 12 hours.
Yep. But they authorized us for 60 hours a week. So we'd go Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
And we would get our 60 hours.
Wow. That was amazing. I mean, that really helped me understand the marketplace. And the company that eventually was started, a few years after that experience was so pivotal because I really got to understand that space much more differently than just coming up with an idea, but I truly was on the front lines of that type of legal outsourcing work that we were doing. And
we were in the trenches, we were going through documents in Japanese.
Yeah, that's right.
And working on disputes, and then I remember going back to California, probably 2014, and working 100-hour weeks. We really not with each other, but with the documents and the document universe and the opposing counsel. We really went to war. I mean, 100-hour weeks. I remember being on the phone with you for several hours a day because I think I was the PM on that project we were working on.
Oh yeah, that one. That's right. I do remember that one.
Dispute.
Oh my goodness. You know, that was interesting. That entire project, if you will, that entire war room situation that we were managing was probably one of the first remote environments. Remember, I think everybody worked remotely.
I worked in an apartment in Palos Verdes.
Yeah, that's right. And we had teams all over the world.
Yep.
And this is, we're here in 2023, and so it seems almost commonplace that working remotely doesn't seem to mean anything to most people listening to this. But remember, this is 2015, maybe 14.
2014.
That is right. I forgot about that. I remember we co-project managed that, and we had effectively teams around the clock. We had an 8-hour shift, 3 across, 8, 16, 24 hours. And as a project manager, me and you, and I think there was a third person, Rem.
Yeah, Rem. Oh, he's a stud.
Yeah, he's here in Tokyo right now too. Okay. You and myself worked 3 shifts across 24 hours. And I remember we would hand it off at hour 8, and then we would take over, and we would just be on round the clock.
And 100-hour weeks. I mean, we were really going to war. And that was fun. That was a good bonding experience.
Yeah.
And you really get to see who you're working with, because after 100 hours, you can't fake who you are, But as we got more and more delirious, we had more fun. Yeah. And we got a lot done. We turned out a really good project, so that was great.
Oh, that's bringing back memories. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
A lot of good memories.
Oh, definitely. Oh,
And I remember the project was over, so we thought. So I went to dinner. I was at Cheesecake Factory in Santa Monica, and you called me. Are you at your computer? Okay. I can be in about an hour. So I hurried up and scarfed out my dinner, paid the check and got in the car and cruised back to the apartment. I was at an Airbnb type thing. Went back, turned on the computer, and had more work to do because I thought we were done.
Yeah, so did I.
And then we worked through the night, and then Sunday night, it was a Saturday. Sunday night, I had a flight back to Tokyo, and I worked until an hour before the flight and had a car pick me up and take me to the airport, and came back to Tokyo. But I think we tied it off an hour before I left. Good times.
Yeah.
Really good times. Really, man, a lot of good I'm glad we had this conversation because like so many good memories, working together.
I haven't thought about those cases in a number of years until you just brought it up now.
Right. Well, you're working on so much cool stuff now.
Yeah. It was cool then too.
Yeah.
I had a great time.
Yeah. Good time. A lot of good people. And one of the things, so we should explain what you're doing without going into details, was like legal services outsourcing, right?
Yeah.
Is that the best way to describe it?
Yeah, I think that's the best way. I always talk to people who are outside of the industry.
Mm-hmm.
Think of it as legal outsourcing.
Okay.
We can do this meaning the legal services faster, better, and cheaper than a traditional large law firm.
Mm-hmm.
And we work under their supervision, but we can do it, as I said, faster, cheaper, and better. And so we get outsourced tasks where we have to review and analyze code, tag, summarize, translate documents that are in preparation for some type of large investigation, a M&A transaction where we have to do due diligence, a internal audit where they have to review documents. There's a lot of large cases that require evidence that have to be analyzed.
Yep.
There's a use of technology and the machines that are getting much better and precise. Yeah. But as we both know, in legal, you have to be very precision oriented. And so law firms or our various different customers around the world, they need to have partners that know how to do this well and do this in different languages.
Yeah,
I think that's the key portion here.
Yeah.
Because you can do this in English. It takes a good amount of effort and attention to detail. But can you also do this in Japanese or Chinese, Korean?
Yeah, and you've had Spanish language projects as well, right?
Yeah, we've had Thai language and a whole host of different types of cases that we've built out in this industry by building a niche as the experts in this and then building an entire business model around that. So it's been great. And it's fascinating to think about how this happened. We were on the front lines doing the work. And what I realized is when I was doing the work, we were talking about all these hours that we're spending, 20 hours a day working, 12 hours, or however number of hours. How many hours is there in a single week? I forgot, 160,
128. Yeah, I don't know.
It was more than, I think it's 12 times 7, whatever that number comes out to.
Oh, yeah. My math is so bad. That's why I went to law school, because I'm bad at math.
Yeah, and that...
Somebody's probably yelling at their phone right now. It's...
Oh, they have an answer.
168.
It should be, yes, that's right. You got it right.
Right? Yeah. Okay. I used to be pretty good at math in my head. Yeah, until I got a smartphone.
But that was the problem, 168 hours in a week. And if you think about that, can you work 168 hours? You could. Let's say you did. And you got compensated for each of those hours. But you would exhaust yourself. It's really too much that you need to put your body through to do that. And you wouldn't want to do that. And so when I look at the work that we were doing as great of a bonding experience it also helped me understand, how do I scale this? Yeah. How do I make this work where I can remove myself from that 168 hours and instead be more strategic and scaled? And then that really became the basis of a lot of the businesses that we ended up starting and investing in and growing over the last 10 years since I started those projects with you, almost a decade ago. And it's amazing, that trajectory.
Yeah. But you've always been more of an entrepreneur than an hourly wage earner, right?
Yeah, I have. And I've worked for a lot of different institutions and various capacities of my life in the past. I was a speechwriter.
Oh, wow.
In Washington, D.C. I don't know if you knew that.
No.
No, you didn't? Okay. That's another whole conversation. Yeah.
Wow.
One of my first jobs out of college, I moved to Washington, D.C. and I was in my early 20s. And my first job was as a legislative aide for a member of Congress. And I did just whatever they wanted me to do. And oftentimes it was preparing speeches.
Okay.
Stump speeches, 1 minute statements on the House floor.
Yeah.
They're going to go meet with this constituent. So I would do all the advanced work, do the research. Wow. So I still, if you go and I don't know if you still can do this today, but I know if you go into I forgot what the database is in the Library of Congress, and you search the member that I worked for and kind of narrow it down to the year that I was there.
Yeah.
Some of my speeches, I mean, it's not my speeches because it's not under my name, but I know and I remember what I wrote.
Wow.
And I can find them. And I said, those are my words.
That's cool.
So, yeah, I have speeches that I've prepared for this member. But that was my first professional job post undergrad in Washington, D.C.
Writing speeches.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't officially a speech writer.
Yeah.
That wasn't my title. As I mentioned, it was like a legislative aide, or I think it was called an LA for people who know that world in Capitol Hill. I was an LA, not LA, but an LA legislative aide or something like that. I don't think that's what it was, legislative analyst or something.
Okay.
And yeah, we were paid very little. I think I think I took home like, I don't know, $22,000 a year, less than 30. It was very, very minimal.
How do you live on that?
But I enjoyed it. I had a great time. I had a wonderful time, actually. I think back of my early 20s in Washington, D.C., working in the Capitol. It was fantastic. I enjoyed that very much. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, you didn't know that.
Interesting. Wow. So then you start the legal outsourcing company, and then now cybersecurity.
Yeah, cybersecurity.
And that's fascinating because, I mean, everybody's online. Everybody's got and then everybody's got IoT devices in their house, and they don't know where the information's going, where it's being stored, what it's being used for. They don't know the risks. I mean, I've heard at your events, most people set up their webcam or something, and they don't even change the default password that comes with the product.
Yeah.
Right. And most people, Chris and I had a conversation the other day where most people don't even read the terms of service when they sign up for a health app on their phone. And so you've seen a need in the market and risen to the occasion to meet that, and it's a very unique solution and very exciting. And so tell me more.
Cyber crime is a $10.5 trillion problem.
Trillion
with a T. And
that's and I'm bad at economics and numbers. What's the GDP of America?
I think it's about 20 trillion.
Yeah, so we're like the GDP of Japan, maybe.
Yeah.
Somebody's gonna look it up and tell me I'm wrong, but that's okay.
Yeah, we might be wrong a few $trillion.
Sure.
But
just a rounding error.
But it's undeniable that cybercrime has a $10.5 trillion devastating impact globally. So if you look at that and you think about, what does that really mean? Like, it's such a large number.
Yeah.
That you were mentioning, we're all connected.
Yeah.
Just kind of look at that more closely. Like, how many connected devices do we have? Can we actually get away from something that's not connected? And if you think about, and the way I like to think about cybersecurity is, and especially with education, is you would never give a person the keys to a vehicle without giving them proper education about the safety features of how to drive that vehicle, driver's education.
Yep.
And so what's happened in the cybersecurity field, because technology has advanced so rapidly, is that we didn't have time to give the proper education for all the people who now are using all this technology. So user education is so minimal that we're shipping all these products and they're building it and designing it without security as a feature. And so people are getting all these great pieces of equipment, technology. They're connecting their refrigerators. They have webcams and everything. You have diapers that are connected. I don't know if you heard of that.
No.
Yeah.
Well, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, there's a lot of things. I mean, a lot of it has to do with monitoring and being able to have that insight. But really, what does that say? Like we don't give the proper education that comes with the responsibility of these types of devices that are now in our hands, in our children's hands, and people's who otherwise don't know how. One, not only do they not know how to properly use it. You were mentioning about certain safety default features. No one's looking at that. And so what does that mean from the cyber criminal opportunistic perspective? Well, that's the 10.5 trillion that we're talking about. Like there's so much information that's being collected, totally unbeknownst to the person. You know, it typically takes something like 200 days before a company realizes that there's an intrusion. So if someone breached its network and is sitting there listening to conversations, lateraling through the network, looking at Tracy's emails, who he's corresponding to, and they're watching, and they're sort of saying, okay, I see patterns that Tracy's doing here. Interesting. And I'm going to intervene just at the right time. Because I know what he's doing. He's sending email here at this time. He has these kind of communication channels and patterns. And they're sitting just collecting intelligence.
That is scary as hell. So I knew this was going to be a scary conversation, but a conversation we need to have.
Yeah, well, if people want to listen to it, interesting. There's a thing called the Dark Net Diaries. I don't know if you've ever listened to that podcast.
No,
it's really good. Yeah, I don't want my thing is my cyber is not to go down that path. And it's really about informing and educating. And so I love to start businesses that are solving gaps in the market that are economically opportunistic. You know, we can grow as a business and be successful.
And it's worth doing.
And it's also solving a good problem that we need to solve, which is literacy and basic awareness of cyber education and risk around that, whether that's a family unit or a company.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you see people, I'm at a Starbucks and the mom and dad are talking and they give the kid an iPad or a phone and the dad will just give him his phone.
Oh, yeah.
And the kid plays with the phone and heck, you know what? You never know where the kid's going to end up, right? I mean, they could hit the banking app and send money to somebody, or they could open up a browser and see something that nobody should see.
Yeah.
Right? Think of that what you may, you know, violent or nasty or something. And then that kid doesn't have any training on what to do. Like, okay, first of all, what to do if you open up the wrong site, or what to do if somebody, you know, the dad has no training on what to do if somebody says, hey, you need to reset your password. And they click on that link and think, oh, no. I get these frequently. Your payment failed. Please enter your credit card number. I get those all the time. Text messages, SMS, emails. I just delete them.
Oh, you should.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, sometimes it's interesting because sometimes those are legitimate and you have to think about that. Like these companies, to their defense, it's challenging because sometimes there is a need to have to request their customer to reset a password. But how are they going to ask? Are they going to send them a text message? Are they going to call them? Are they going to send them an email?
Yeah.
And it's challenging because, and actually that's a trick question because the right way to respond, so I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
So you get a message like that and it says, Tracy, your account has reset. So please contact and click this link and please reset the password, contact. What do?
Okay, so this happened recently. I forget if it was, let's just use Amazon as an example. Get a message that says your Amazon account has been locked. Well, I don't click on the link in the email. I go to the website and log in. Oh, okay, no problem. Right, I'm not locked out. Or my bank.
Oh, there you go. Yeah,
it's my bank.
Or what if they call you? They say, Tracy, they initiate the conversation. Okay. They're calling you and you pick up the phone.
That's a good one. I would say, let me call you back.
You're very good. You must have been taking some of our security training.
I'm cheating. I have the cheat codes. We've had this. However, what is frightening, and this happened to me on Thanksgiving one year, my bank called me and said somebody is in Atlanta or Tampa, Florida, using your debit card. I said, well, that can't be. I just used it at the Kroger in Michigan. They said, well, you just bought $900 worth of electronics in Walmart in Tampa, Florida, too. I said, well, there's no way I could be in two places at once like that. And they said, well, okay. It turned out okay. But I said, is there a number I can call you back? And I pulled out my debit card, and she read me the exact number to call back. And I was like, okay. I'm sorry, I have to call you back. And I did. And I didn't get the same operator. And but I got a different person. I said, I got a phone call, and here's what's going on. And they, click. You can hear the, pitter patter on the keyboard, and they come up, oh, Mr. Greenwood, your account. Yeah. Have you been to Tampa, Florida recently? I'm like, okay. It was a legit phone call. But I'm sure if it hadn't been, they would say, well, we didn't call you. There's no notes. So that I always offer to call back. So
you got it right.
Yep.
I mean, that's, what's interesting about that is that you know that the right protocol is to slow down.
Yes.
It's always calm down. Think about that, because what happens here is that the focus is urgency. They want you to react emotionally.
Yep.
And it's a emotional attack.
Yeah.
Social engineering
Yep.
is always about getting people at that moment. And so a lot of times from a business standpoint, it slows down transactions because people are in a hurry in the course of their day.
Yeah.
Let's say you're working, you have all these different things that you need to do. You're getting a flurry of emails.
Yep.
And a lot of them are making requests, and you're having to go through it very quickly. And so what ends up happening is what you're telling me is you have to slow down and say, hold on, I'm going to hang up the phone and I'm going to go and call you back again. And imagine the transactional cost there. Like that's going to slow you down. It might add like 2 or 3 extra minutes. You're doing all these things, and imagine in the context of the work environment. Do you want to do that? Like say, actually, I'm going to call you back. And the person's like, what are you talking about? Like, it's me. Like I'm And it's no, I'm going to slow down. And so a lot of what happens is the speed of what's happening today with technology is so fast. And what we're asking people to do is slow down. It's going to make things slightly slower.
Yep.
But it's going to make things safer. Because with all these things that are connected, it's all about convenience. Right? Like we have all these things, but remember, go back 10, 15 years ago. We were fine without all these.
Oh, yeah. We were just fine.
We were fine. Yeah. So.
Yep. We got along great. I mean, without an internet connected TV, I could still watch movies. I could go to the movie theater.
Yeah.
Imagine that. Could go to a football game. Could, do whatever. I could watch TV. And life moved on. And we'd go shopping. We'd do our thing and go on trips.
Yeah, we connected. Now we think about that. What does that mean? Like we connected with each other.
Yeah.
And now when people say, are you connected? That's different. Like think about even the semantically, like what that means, how it's understood when you say, hey, Tracy, we connected. And it's like, what do you mean connected? Like connected in what way? Like through the network? It's interesting.
Through the matrix?
Yeah.
I've really pulled back on social media.
Yeah.
For this podcast, I post and ghost. That was Joe Rogan's advice.
Oh, really?
Yep. You go online, you say, I've got a new episode with Jonathan Rossi, and here's a link. And don't read comments about yourself. And that's,
Do you turn off the comments?
I know, because I want the user engagement. I'm doing YouTube. I'm doing this podcast. And then I tell people to engage on social media through the links in the show notes,
Okay.
And so, I want to get engagement, but the right type of engagement. You can turn off comments. You can also mute users as well. So
I see.
I haven't had to. Everybody's been positive so far, especially the YouTube. I'm doing informational videos on life in Japan.
I've seen some of them. Those are good.
They're fun.
You said the what was it? The podcasters that you should know. The top 10 podcasters.
Top 10 YouTubers you should know in Japan. Yeah.
Right.
And
which for a lot of people, these are unknown.
Yeah.
Because when you don't speak or read Japanese, which you do, you get to open up a whole new world.
Yep.
Like you can read the Japanese newspaper, you can watch Japanese comedy. You do a lot of things that a lot of people don't do.
Yep. And it opens up a whole
can't
new world.
do, not a lot don't do. It's just,
they cannot do. Yeah. And it's so funny because after doing this I first came in 1990 to Tokyo, to Japan, and now Japanese comes second nature to me, and I forget that it's hard work to learn.
Yeah, I've learned that a lot of people who are here who are not native Japanese, there's a certain plateau that they experience in language acquisition that after a few years, and they can stay here for many years, they realize that they're not going to truly become fluent enough. And maybe you have some insight into this, is they get to this plateau linguistically.
Yeah.
And they just sort of like throw their hands up and say, forget it. I'm not going to try to learn anymore, because the common response from people, even if you do have a good command of Japanese, tends to be, "Oh, you speak Japanese? It's so good.
You're so good. Nihongo jouzu desu ne."
Yeah. And so you have to go through that experience each time. And I'm sure you have to go through that every day living here.
Yep.
But you have to do it with a smile.
Yep.
And say, yeah, thank you. Like as if it's the first time. It's almost in some ways kind of like being a celebrity.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
it's funny because it is exactly like that. Yeah.
Not that I know. We're just normal guys.
We're just normal
guys.
I'm just
thinking.
Yeah.
But you have to. It's like when you have friends visiting Japan.
Yeah.
And you have to take them to Tokyo Tower. You go to Asakusa, the usual places, and you have to go there like as if it's your first time.
Yeah.
Right.
And explain it to them like, okay, this like I did a video on the gate at Zojoji, one of my favorite places to go, and I have to explain, okay, this gate was built in 1622. That means it's 400 years old now, and it was built with a grant from the Tokugawa shogunate, and I had to learn Japanese history because I was probably the worst tour guide. And people would ask me like, oh, who built this and why did they build it and what's the difference between a temple and a shrine? I'm like, I don't know. I haven't even climbed Mount Fuji. I've been here since 1990 on and off. I haven't even climbed Mount Fuji. I've been to Hokkaido once. I've been to Osaka once. Never been to Okinawa.
Oh.
Yeah. And so I spent all my time in Kanto, which is the eastern region of Japan, in around Tokyo, Yokohama. And a lot of that is because work keeps me busy. Thank you. Work keeps me busy, and also, because of just, personal. Everybody I know is around here, So, but I've seen people who come here and travel around Japan and do more than I've done. They'll take the bullet train all over the place. They'll climb Mount Fuji. They'll go to Akihabara. They go to the robot cafe. It's like, wow, you can do all that stuff. Like, and then they'll go to an onsen, a hot spring, and go to Nara and see the deer. And I'm like, wow. So I'm a really bad tour guide because I haven't done all that stuff, and I've spent all my time around here. Yeah. Maybe I should get around and do more. So anyway, but So back to the cybersecurity thing
yeah.
is, all these IoT devices, Internet of Things, right?
Internet of everything. Web3.
Yep.
Whole thing is changing, shifting. And I saw that as your good old capitalist opportunistically. I said, my goodness, this is changing the face of the world. And here we are in Japan, the third largest economy in the world, but so okureteru. Behind. Which is ironic because everybody from outside thinks the opposite. They think Japan is so advanced and they're so technologically progressive.
Yep.
There is that element, but actually they're not also. It's a fascinating country in so many ways.
Crazy because if you look at, and I'm a couple years older than you, but not that that's a big deal, but I remember when Sony dominated the market, right? And it was unthinkable that an American company that makes phones would dominate the market like iPhone, like Apple. It was unthinkable. And I thought when cell phones became a thing, Motorola was very big, by the way. Motorola was huge. They had the flip phone, and then they had the Razr and all this, right? But Sony Ericsson had a great phone, right? Nobody thought that a company like Apple would be dominating the market. And so from my demographic, my age, we remember when Sony dominated the market and Toyota and then Lexus. You look at those vehicles and they're so advanced and they're so good. And I drove a Lexus when I was in LA. I absolutely love that car. And it was so well built and fast and so reliable and all that. And then so we there is a tendency to think that Japan is advanced. And yet the technology is. The cars are amazing. The medical technology and pharmaceutical industry is really advanced. But when you get into the office environment and people are still sending faxes and all that, and it's like there's a cognitive dissonance that happens when you're here and you go to the bank and the ATM is closed at 3 p.m. And you're like, wait a second. What? And then you go to the city office to get a paper and you need to pull out your little seal and stamp hit the table. You have to stamp the paper with this red ink but they're also making Lexus and they're also making, precision instruments but you're also doing a lot of stuff on paper. And I think in some ways that has helped with slowing down cybercrime, because if you need to authorize an expense, you have to go through 10 people, and also the language barrier. But there's a huge thing, and I'm sorry, the telephone scams. One is called Ore Sagi. Somebody calls and say, "Mom, it's me. I crashed the company car and I need $5,000 right now or I'm going to get fired. And can you, not to my account, can you transfer it to the company's account? Here it is." And all they say is, "It's me, Mom, it's me. Yeah. I need money right now or I'm going to get fired. My life is over." And then this middle-aged woman is thinking, I gave birth to this kid. I fed this kid. I sent him to elementary school, junior high school, university, and all this stuff, and he's going to get fired.
Yeah.
And she sends $5,000, goes to the bank, sends $5,000, and that money is gone. And there's, they prey on the elderly, and it's always this urgency. There are a lot of really unique scams that happen in Japan that I don't know if you could get away with in America, because they have phone banks of people doing this. And for a country that is so honest, I left my wallet in a phone booth, had $3,000 in it.
A phone booth here in Japan.
In Japan.
Yeah.
I left my wallet in a phone booth. I had just got paid. My employer paid cash. And then I had to go to the bank and deposit it, but I couldn't go that day because it was already past 3 o'clock. But you would use these phone cards, magnetic phone cards. So I put my wallet on top of the phone, took out the phone card, made a phone call, and the train was coming. So I ran to the train. And when I went to buy a ticket, I realized I didn't have my wallet. And I had just got paid, and $3,000 is gone. I was convinced. And so I run back to the phone booth. It's gone. And I'm devastated. I go back upstairs and I to the train master. He looks at me kind of funny. I said, yeah, my wallet. He goes, what's your name? And I told him. He said, oh. And he's looking at this ID. Is this you? Some high school girls had turned it in. They saw it and they're like, oh, there's a wallet. And I don't even think they opened it up. But for a country that is so honest, they had $3,000 in cash. Imagine in 1990 what two high school kids could have done with $3,000 cash. They turned it in. And they had no idea who I was. But there's these telephone scams, the oreorisagi, the other things, you know. So
yeah, there's so many.
Yeah.
And what we've done is we've collected an inventory of different types of schemes and that attack elderly, that attack all kinds of people. And there's a lot of them out there. There's many of them using today's technology to become more precise. Like you mentioned, they wouldn't attack Japanese because they don't have a good command of the Japanese language. Well, that's changing with ChatGPT. And so the entire landscape is shifting. And when you were saying it's actually positive that Japan might be a little backwards in some areas.
Yeah.
You know, the fax machine, the non-technical or analog aspects of life actually is an impediment for security to thrive. Oh, I'm sorry, not security, from
security
cyber
breaches.
Security breaches, correct.
Yeah.
It's a little harder if everybody was disconnected and they were not online.
Yeah, well, if you need 10 signatures to pay an invoice, and somebody calls them and says, hey, you're late.
Yeah.
In the States, you might just get online and pay it. In Japan, you need to get 10 signatures. Unless they're under threat of getting terminated or losing a contract. Urgency.
Yeah.
Slow down.
And that's changing because with digital transformation, what they call DX all the time out here, really it's the application of the use of some digital technology to speed up that process. Now you don't have to get signatures. You can do, e-signatures. And so companies like DocuSign and various competitors, and there's a lot of local Japanese versions of that company here, they're getting great market share. I mean, they're really selling this into corporate Japan. But with that, and this goes back to that thing I was just telling you a few moments ago, is where's the equivalent of the driver's education with the adoption of that technology? And that is what I looked at when I started what we think to be the biggest security education business in Japan. Our business has the largest volume of security educational learning for everyday Japanese businesses. And so when you think about that, you're adopting new technologies, but you're not implementing the proper education with that.
Yeah.
And so I saw that over the last 4 or 5 years, and it was just within the last 2-3 years, definitely during COVID, that became so pronounced. And when I'm looking at that today in 2023, if we're not properly educated, you're going to see more ore sagis thriving because they're happening. I mean, there's millions of them happening every single day. And most of them are caught because our technology and security infrastructure is good, but it doesn't capture all of it. And when it doesn't, then what happens? Then it gets to that end user, which is you or me or your brother, your sister, or your grandmother, your mom. All of these people, if the systems fail, which they always do, they can't, like your secure email gateway, for instance, does not capture they just cannot. There's 0 days out there, and there's so many things. They will come through, even if it's only 1%. But if you're doing brute force attacks, thousands upon thousands, and 1% could be 10, 20, 30 emails.
Yeah.
And so when they do get through, what is that last line of defense? Are they properly educated? Do they know and say, wait a second, this is interesting. I should call that person back. They're asking me to do something that seems a little strange. I watched a series of videos. I've been trained properly. And I'm going to slow down. And that's the key right there. And so I saw that developing over the last few years. Well, not developing, but the lack of that.
Yeah.
But I saw that the technology was being accelerated and the adoption of that was just moving so fast.
And it seems to get faster.
And it's getting faster every single, more and more of it is being adopted. And as that's happening, where's the corresponding education? Non-existent.
But it's who takes responsibility for that? Is it a government function? Is it the schools? Is it the company? And I think a lot of companies try valiantly. They try.
Yeah.
But that's not their business. Their business is maybe selling cars or selling stereos or selling microphones or medicine or something. They're not a cybersecurity specialist, right?
They don't have to be a cybersecurity specialist. I think they have to, and this is the responsibility on a couple of different fronts. For us, we have to be able to tell that story and connect that back to the business. What's the business use case of having security education and having a culture of security across your organization?
Yeah.
Because they're looking at, they meaning like, let's say the executives, the board, different business units, they're thinking like, why do I care? I need to ship this product and I need to go to market. And you, as the provider of this education who's trying to sell into these organizations, need to make that business case and say, this will affect and impact your intellectual property. If a breach occurs, this has a certain monetary impact. If you're a publicly listed company, this could impact your market share. There's reputation damage. There's a lot of things. So you have to translate just security education. That term is used too loosely.
It's a little nebulous, right?
Nebulous, right. And so we have to define that and then have metrics around that and say, well, what does this translate to? And Japan still is a very immature market when we talk about the adoption of security education. The whole security maturity model, that kind of term is used in the Americas, in the US. That doesn't really exist here in Japan. I think what we're doing as a company is blazing that trail effectively. Like there is no security education conversation that's happening. I think the summit that we had last week here in Tokyo was probably, I don't think there's been any conversation in Japanese or in English about truly building a metrics-based security educational framework in Japan. And that's what we're doing. And I put together these events, building and investing in this security educational infrastructure, that what is called SAYA, to advance that. And it's a blast doing it, actually, because I'm learning as I go. Like, I don't pretend to know all this. I don't. I'm learning by talking to customers, asking them questions, and then taking that information and really building that into the product lifecycle, the new content that we deliver. And it depends if you're talking to a retail company, a chemicals company, a hospital, financial services. They all have different needs. And so what I've been doing the last couple of weeks is listening. And part of building the business is listening. A lot of times people talk and talk and talk and talk, and they tell people what they should hear. But for me, it's slow down. We're talking about slowing down and listen. And I spend a lot of time here just listening to customers. And it's given me such a wealth of information. Like, as a matter of fact, we're going to be releasing a gamification feature built into our learning management system for Japanese to learn and adopt security education. We thought, what if we build a gaming element feature into that experience? So that's what I've learned, that just by talking to customers, because I kept hearing about this thing about incentivized learning. And they said, well, people don't want to learn and do this corporate learning. It's so boring. And what's in it for them? And they have all these questions. And then you, as the provider of this learning content library, this program, you have to make it dead simple. And you have to also do it with things that are not going to be filled with friction as they're adopting it.
Yeah.
And you want to make it just fun, engaging, and it has to have KPIs kind of around. There's a lot of things that you got to do, and a lot of it starts from us listening.
And then in the end, it's got to be effective too. So
yeah. No, it's been great. When you talk about security education,
and they say that the weakest link in any company's security is the human, right? So they get that phone call, hey, your invoice is late. Why haven't you paid? Or they get that email, click here to accept, your click here to check the progress on your package.
Yeah.
Right. And they're like, oh no, if I don't get that, I'm going to be in trouble. So I better click on it right now and just, okay, slow down.
I mean, in some ways that explanation of the weakest link is the human. It's interesting. We can talk about that. A lot of people hate that when people call it that because it blames the person. It's saying like you're the weakest link, and saying that humans are very diverse beings. And when we say the humans I think that comes generally from more of the marketing aspect of it. Like when you market security, it's always nice to kind of have these little catchphrases like the weakest link, a human firewall, and you have all these things, and they all sound great. And so I think it's possibly a positive thing when you're trying to just get the attention of a company by saying the people in your company are weak links. And you're thinking like it absolves the responsibility of upper management or the boards or the executives to say like, is it the fault of that person? Or is maybe we're not putting the right kind of controls in place? Are we providing the right kind of culture and support?
Yeah. Well, I guess you could turn it around and say, if I've been on the board of a company and there's a lot of responsibility there. It seems like in a Disney movie with the villain who's twisting his mustache and counting piles of money while smoking a cigar. That has nothing to do with reality, by the way. But when you're on the board of a company and you're responsible for really big decisions, has the board and the purpose of a board is to grow and preserve value for the shareholder, right? And every decision we made is this in the best interest of the shareholders and the employees? And like I said, there's a lot of responsibility there. And so let's say I'm the board member of this company that's been under attack, cyber attacks and, social engineering attacks. Have I taken my responsibility seriously and provided the right training? So if we turn it on our head and say, like, maybe that sounds like blaming, and I don't like to play the blame game, right? Okay, I could say that, and it sounds negative, the human being is the weakest link. However, have I provided that environment where they can win, right?
Yeah, because the idea here is not to say any security solution is going to remove the threat. Really, it's going to reduce the risk at best. We do everything we can to be able to manage and have a resilient system. That it's going to happen. Like security is always under attack. And so as a company, as an individual, we have to be resilient, and then we have to have systems in place. So I have to be very careful, because sometimes when I'm talking to prospective Japanese customers, there's this impression that what we're going to give to them, this security educational program, somehow is going to remove the security threat, and that there should never be an incident. And so if there is, it's the failure of our program. Like, I thought we just spent all this money on your security program. It's supposed to teach and educate all of our staff about what not to do. And
we had a breach.
And the person opened an attachment, or they got socially engineered. Your system here is a failure. I had that conversation actually a couple days ago, which is interesting. They were saying some of our customers would think that, so we have to be very careful. And I mean, because the level of sophistication in the market here is wide. I mean, there's companies that really understand and get it, but then there's a lot of companies they're saying security doesn't exist. There is no cybersecurity professional in that company. There's nobody responsible for that task.
I'm trying to think of a proper analogy, and it's like saying, I took driver education, I got my driver's license, and got in a car accident. It must have been my instructor's fault. It's like, but yeah, you can always give people all the best education. They're, like you said, there's still going to be mistakes. People are human, and there's still going to be. So I guess then it comes down to having the proper measures in place for when the breach happens, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, this is how. When I think about why we entered the market, is I saw that there was this gap, and that gap was wide enough, and there was very few people really looking at that. And I kept hearing from people, education is so missing. Like, we need to have systems, but it was talked about in such a broad way. Like, we just need people to have better understanding. What does that mean, better understanding? What exactly do you have to do to measure that they've grown and learned over time? You have to figure out some type of metrics to tie that back to certain behavior. And as I looked at all that, I said to myself, wow, there's an opportunity here. Just like with our conversation
legal
about
services,
legal services, better, cheaper, and faster.
Yeah.
And the same thing here. I mean, I think it's slightly different. It's not better, cheaper, faster, but our content is better executed because it's in native Japanese. And I don't think we even talked about that.
Yeah.
That's a whole other area. So it says, well, why are you creating this content? There's a lot of global providers out there that publish fairly okay content, but it's for the global audience, meaning that it's usually in English. And then it's then translated and loosely localized to 25 languages, and Japanese is one of them.
And it's Americentric.
And it's exactly.
So John and Tom are at the Super Bowl.
Super Bowl doesn't really mean anything.
A Japanese person sees that, like, what the heck is that? A big salad? Or this couple is taking pictures of the Golden Gate Bridge. And it's like, wait.
Yeah.
And Thanksgiving dinner, and you get an email. It's like, what? So you've explained to me off air that your content is made for Japan.
Yeah.
That's a huge differentiator,
it's
because
a major differentiator. Huge. And I think people underappreciate that. And this theme is constant in the work that I do from our legal services, because similarly to that, we were doing that in Japanese, Chinese, Korean, and that was that differentiator in the US market. And we have a presence here in Japan too for that business. And it's the same thing. When we talk to clients, is that same conversation. It's a very different process when you're dealing with data in another language and you're having to do legal analysis on that for a U.S. litigation. It is not going to be solved by machine translation or some half-baked empty solution that can get you some fuzzy understanding. But in legal, we need precision and proper teams in place to really make sense of that, because you're dealing with multi-billion-dollar engagements and litigation and huge penalties and criminal fine, all these things. And those are important enough where you have to put proper processes in place.
And I explained it to a friend. They said, because I love this, e-discovery. I absolutely love it. And I shouldn't tell you this because you've hired me to do work before, but I would do it for free.
All right, I'll make a note of that.
Forget I said that. I'm going to delete that. That I never said that. But it's so fun. The investigation, the chase, the finding that.
Yeah, the needle in the haystack. Yes. You're really building a story.
Yeah, it's so fun. And and then the interesting thing is, if you use machine translation, there are so many words in Japanese that don't translate to English. And there's so many things with double meaning, and there's slang. And then on top of that, you have the company culture and their abbreviations and acronyms, right? So, unless you have somebody who's either native or very good in that language, going over that data for you and doing the analysis and doing the report, and has the cultural understanding, putting that through a machine, you're gonna, first of all, it's gonna be garbled. It's gonna be quasi English, and then it's gonna have literal translation, and then it's gonna miss a lot, right? Because of there's a lot of cultural stuff that just gets lost in translation. And Japanese is, I'm sure there are other languages like this, maybe Arabic, with the culture is completely different. But if you go from Spanish to English, it's pretty close. I mean, you speak Spanish, right? We both speak Spanish, and it's pretty close. Now, there are things when you get in different countries in South America where they speak Spanish, you're going to have different expressions, right? But if you go from Spanish or Italian to English, you're going to get pretty darn close. But if you go from Japanese to English, it's not even going to be close. So,
and you can try it too.
You can try. Good luck.
So that experience of looking at culture, and how that doesn't properly translate well, in so many ways, was the same thing that I saw in cybersecurity. Security education was also faced with this problem. Most of these global providers of educational content, they looked at it as build in English and deploy in 35 languages, translate it, and then localize it, and then that was fine. And so Japan just got whatever Japan got.
The world got.
Whatever the world got, whether it's in Swedish or Japanese or German, it was just a secondary, and it wasn't given that priority. And so not only is security such an important, as I mentioned, 10.5 trillion, third largest economy in the world, Japan, you have this massive problem. Japan's not properly thinking about the risk, because maybe that might be another conversation we can have, because physically here, it's a safe place.
It's amazing.
Isn't it amazing that you can walk down any dark alley, any time of the day? There wouldn't be a problem. You would be fine. And it sort of gives you an ease and a calmness when you think about that.
There's a word for it, heiwaboke.
Heiwaboke, yeah.
Heiwaboke means like lulled into security by the peacefulness. It's
right. And that's so true, because you're talking about physical safety in Japan.
So good.
Great. Wonderful. I mean, there's so many things to love about Japan, and there's so many things to dislike about Japan. It's one of those countries of contrast.
Amazing. Yeah.
So with that, the idea of the peacefulness of the physical space gives people the impression that we're secure.
And a lot of people are very trusting too.
Really trusting. And so when it comes to like network security, all these connected devices and internet, it's a whole different shift. And then cybersecurity, and people are actively seeking to target Japanese companies. I mean, you have APTs out there. I don't know if you know what APTs mean, but
APT?
Advanced Persistent Threats.
Oh.
These are organized threat actors, typically through the auspices of state-sponsored criminal gangs. And so there's people who follow this, look at different APTs. They have different numbers. And some of them are dedicated to industries.
Oh.
And they might be organized by particular countries that are unfriendly to Japan. They'll say, we want to
There are
target,
a couple out there.
and they want to target, let's say, the Japanese telecommunications industry, the critical infrastructure.
Yeah.
And they focus, and they have whole teams of people dedicated to that task. And if you're living in Heiwaboke, you can't imagine a world that really there's people that do that stuff.
Yeah.
why would they do that? It doesn't make any sense. Like, you think, why?
Why would they do that?
Yeah. Like, what did we do to them? Like, it just, and I'm not trying to say everyone's naive, but I think a lot of people, because they're living in a nice, safe environment, I mean, they're for a lot of reasons, right? It's a safe space. It's a good thing. And then there's also a historical reason. Like, the country's experienced post-World War II. And we can talk about that. We talk about the Constitution and the pacifist nature of the Constitution.
Yep.
And so today, when you fast forward to 2023, and then now with this business, and then with the lack of proper educational content,
and all these new devices coming online
at the same time, and then also the lack of, and a lot of people who come to Japan can experience is the lack of actual English spoken here, the actual knowledge of people, even in a big city like Tokyo. How many people, when you compare to other cosmopolitan cities like Hong Kong, Singapore, a lot of people speak English well enough. Here, you've been here many years now, Tracy, so you can probably attest to this more than I can. People struggle.
They really
do. So then for me, as a business thesis, the answer is you have to have truly Japanese design, build, scripted, educational content that is properly tailored for the Japanese user. And that's what we created.
And you know, I'm into music, and bands like Deep Purple is still popular. Smoke on the Water, you know. Deep Purple is still extremely popular. I want to say Cheap Trick and other bands that were like big in the 70s and 80s. And they're so popular because they did an album live in Japan. Mr. Big.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Big is insanely popular in Japan because they did an album live at the Budokan, I want to say. It was called Live, Mr. Big Live Raw Like Sushi. And it was here, recorded live in Japan, and I want to say it's at the Budokan. And they showed the Japanese audience, we care about you. We've done, of all the places we've been, London has concerts, right? Germany, Brazil, New York City, San Francisco, LA, Boston. Of all the places we could have recorded an album, we chose Tokyo. And that endears them to the Japanese fans. And I sometimes think that Japanese consumers want a company to tailor something to the Japanese market. First of all, because for the Japanese market, the tastes are different, but also to show that you put in the effort to tailor to the Japanese market.
Yeah.
I think that's what they want to see.
I agree. I mean, I invested in that. I think you're right. And if you think about that, somebody's making something for you. If you think about that for like bespoke clothing.
Yeah, a suit, a nice
suit.
Nothing better than a tailor-made suit.
Right. I mean, think about that. Would you like something off the rack, or do you want something custom tailored, fitted for you? And that's very important when you think about that. Like you give a sign of respect too.
Yes.
Like, look, I appreciate. I'm not just creating a translated content. You're not just a secondary market for us.
Yeah.
And for us, it's not. Japan is the primary market for us.
Too many global companies. And I understand it, because when you build at scale, you got to.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, we're doing it we're going to scale globally, and we get a lot of interest outside of Japan too. But we're doing it the inverse. We're saying Japan first, and then we're going to go out.
Because too many companies just say, "Well, this worked in Australia, it worked in America, it worked in England.
Yeah,
it'll work in Japan." And it doesn't always. So.
And I think for cybersecurity education, the stakes are too big.
Yes.
For you to say, well, we're going to try this out in Japan. There's a lot of companies that come to Japan. They hire their country manager, and then they go through them like every year, and they get a new one, then they leave. And so a common question that I get from a lot of Japanese, and they ask, which is understandable, is questions like, how long have you been here? Do they think we're just going to come in and leave?
A fly-by-night organization.
Right. And so a lot of them are skeptical that we even have stuff. At first, when they realize you have a team here and you're actually building this in Japanese. Like, it is. This is scripted in Japanese. And what do you mean? No, we didn't hire interpreters to none of those. That's not what we're doing. We actually spend all of our energy researching all the vulnerabilities. You mentioned ore sagi, but we look at all the different versions of that.
Yeah, there are a lot.
And there's so many of them. Like a couple of months ago, a hospital in Osaka got attacked and it shut down the entire system.
Oh, no.
And so that was a big issue. And so surgeries had to be postponed. There's a lot of things that happened.
No,
and so now people understand like the life-threatening nature of cybersecurity. When an incident like that occurs and it hits a hospital, then people start paying attention. And so from us as a business that looks to monitor all of this, we'll take something like that that's very Japanese in that it took place in Japan. And then we learn for that. It's like, what happened in that incident? And then we try to then take that and then we get inspired to tell a story that's effective, that can then be digestible for an everyday employee in a company so that they understand this is relatable. And we tell stories. And we actually make things called shikimajikan. The idea of each of these episodes are made to fill gap times in the daily schedule of a Japanese employee, because a Japanese employee is very busy. There's a lot of responsibilities. So shikimajikan, if you take those two words, shikimajikan, it's like gap time, and you're really making sure that the content is not overly long, and it has to be short enough to kind of fit within their busy schedule. And so when we talk about that to people, they ask us, how long is your episode? Like, don't worry, we've thought through this because we don't want it to be too long. Because a lot of times, some of these topics, they're very heavy and technical. And so what we do is we want to make sure that they're single topic focused and easy to digest. And I think most people, a lot of the existing type of security education is PowerPoint heavy, seminar oriented. And they tend to be long, drawn out, kind of more like pedantic. Like, you shouldn't do this, and this is the sensei that's coming and is going to tell you, all the things you shouldn't do and what you shan't. And the human mind can't remember all that information. That's extremely boring. It doesn't matter even if that's something anybody's used to doing. It's hard for information to be retained in that kind of environment. So you take a 30-minute PowerPoint or a 30-minute presentation, which a lot of companies say, we have these presentations. Why would we want to buy an entire program and pay for that? Well, we had this person over here give a presentation, and we know what we know. We have this document circulating through the company, and it tells people what you shouldn't do. You shouldn't click on documents. You shouldn't do this. And it's just very instructive, and dry. And then there's ours. All of it is in anime.
And it's also, if like I was talking about the homegrown solution. If I'm a medical device company and I want to create a cybersecurity program for my employees for education, that's not my job. I mean, I make medical devices. How am I going to design an effective
with that?
Cybersecurity program.
There are companies that will say, you were tasked to do that now. Go and create it.
Just somebody from IT.
Go do it. It can't be that difficult. Don't click documents, attachments, and they simplify it like that and say, that can't be that difficult. Just put it together, we'll circulate it around, and move on.
Wow.
Wow.
For something that is so important that could be life-threatening in a hospital, or could be bankrupt a company. Or could cost somebody their job, or stop the factory or something. It's so, I don't know how to explain it. It's astonishing that they don't put more work into it. And I'm talking on a global scale. I'm not criticizing Japan, because a lot of people don't realize, they've been lucky, right? They've been lucky so far, and they don't really think about it. And so then something's in the news. There were a couple recently in the news in Japan. A bunch of patient information might have got leaked. And people don't. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think people think about this until it hits home, right? So you got to make it hit home, and then the way your LMS, your learning management system works, and the way the content works, brings it home, right?
Make it fun.
Yeah.
You have to make it fun and engaging and tied to reducing behaviors that can lead to things like that, to certain risky behavior that tied to activities that can increase more data breaches to possibly occur.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot of things. So it's a great space to be in because it has yet to really take form here in Japan.
You know, Ethan Hawke says that there is no path until you walk it. Right? So you're trailblazing. And it's exciting.
Oh, it's very exciting. And I'm going to have to come back to Japan. Unfortunately, I say that in jest.
Good news and bad news.
More regularly. Because I haven't been here in a long time.
Yeah, well, we just went through this thing where people couldn't really travel.
Yeah. So this trip has been great because it's confirmed that this platform that we've built in the last 2 years, because I haven't got to step foot in Japan, it really allowed us to focus in on a problem and talk to people. I had all these Zoom calls with customers in Japan, trying to learn. We did this huge conference.
Yeah, tell me about
back in 2020.
Okay.
Right in the middle of the year when everything shut down and nobody can go out. And at that time, I was going to do a conference here in Tokyo.
Yeah.
But I couldn't. And so we ended up doing a virtual conference.
Okay.
And I ran the entire conference virtually out of a studio in LA.
Okay.
And it went for 4 days. So I was hosting, I think it was 62 speakers from 21 countries. I must have had, I don't know how many hours of talking that I had to do. Like I moderated at least 6 panels. And
that's crazy.
It was amazing because it was a tour of the world. We had speakers and a lot of them are on security topics. And so I was able to really talk to security leaders across 20 plus different countries. And that was fantastic because I learned so much. And that was before we built the security awareness program.
Okay.
So a lot of like the work, if you see, like before I end up starting a business, I typically like to go and conduct my research and talk to the front lines of people who are either doing it or joining in myself and becoming like a contractor so I can learn and understand like how does discovery actually work on the ground?
Yeah.
What are the agencies involved?
I remember you were doing a cybersecurity summit.
Yeah, you remember that.
But you were doing outsourcing legal services and I didn't make the connection.
Right, yeah. People thought, what are you doing? You have this huge security conference, but you also have this legal outsourcing business.
And you were doing market research.
I was doing market research, yeah. Yeah, I was doing, but I gave people a platform.
Yeah.
And then and I've met for the first time, over the last year when people started to travel more, that I met during that conference. Like I had a gentleman who was this data privacy security expert attorney from Ghana. And he was one of our speakers, so fantastic. I mean, he was so insightful about the security and data privacy regime in Ghana. And he spoke on a few panels. And then he contacts me a few months ago. And he says, Jonathan, I'm in Washington, D.C. now. And I'm getting an LLM at the George Washington School of Law. And I said, really? I'm in D.C. too. Wow. And I met him and had lunch, and it was really nice because I got to see him in person. Yeah. But what connected me to him was our summit. We call it the 10X Summit.
Okay.
And I think it was called the SIA's 10X Summit.
Yeah.
And connecting the world. And I forgot exactly what the subtitle was. But I remember I had so many conversations. But the thing is, I learned a lot. Like I don't pretend I'm the security expert. I'm not. You know, funny thing, I'll say it here is I don't come from cybersecurity. And I think that's very important to a lot of times new ideas come from people from outside of the industry because they come with fresh eyes. They're not jaded by the space. They coming in with innovation and a mindset of change. And for me too, I'm always looking at things from the outside. And
and you heard the story probably where they put I won't go through the whole story, but they put like 4 apes in a room and then a banana at the top of the ladder. And one says, "Oh, I want the banana." So they start walking up, and then somebody drops a bucket of water on the ape, and all the other apes like, "Oh no! Every time you go for the banana, you're gonna get a splash of cold water in your face." So they take one out, put a new one in, and he's like, "Oh, look at there's a banana. I'll go for it." And then everybody grabs him and says, "Don't do that." I mean, they don't talk, but they stop. They prevent him from going for the banana. And then they keep changing animals until all the original ones are gone. And none of the others have seen this bucket of water get thrown on them. And they don't know why they're stopping the other guy. And the bottom line is, that's the way we've always done it. So company cultures families get like this too, but company cultures get like this. We're talking about corporate stuff, so we'll stay on the corporate track here. Company cultures get like this. Well, we've always done it like that. Nobody can tell you why, but we've always done it like this. So somebody who comes in from the outside and says, "Hey, why don't you guys make cybersecurity training available in Japan, scripted in Japanese for specifically Japanese situations?" And people say, "Well, we've always done it like this." But what if the way we've always done it is a crappy way, right? So you've come in from watching, from having the cybersecurity summit and meeting people and listening to people, and developed a product that. What is amazing about you, and this is why I love having conversations with you. We've people who don't know that we've known each other for a decade. We've had so many Skype calls and conversations and in-person conversations. And one of the things I like about you is you see things before they happen. It's almost like a Jedi reflex, right? Like you see a trend and then you act on it. And a couple of years later, people say, "Oh, now I see why he did that." Yeah. I think that's the entrepreneurial mindset, or the one of the skills for being an entrepreneur is anticipating market trends and then acting on them.
Yeah. And also being bold enough.
Yes.
And it has to have a certain tolerance for risk.
Yeah.
And it's going to be with that risk failure. But I look at failure as a positive. Like for me to be able, like I look at some of the large engagements that we've closed on in our other company. And I think about, I do like I don't know how to call it, like an assessment of like, where did that opportunity arise? Yeah. And I go backwards in time and I say, oh my gosh, I try to reach out to this person, or I went and responded to this message and I met with this person for coffee, and then I requested if they can introduce me to this person, and then I followed up with that person 6 times, and on the 7th time they responded, I met with them, and then they changed jobs and lateral to another company, and then that person introduced me to their supervisor, and I kept following them all the way through. And that was like a couple of years and probably 25 touch points. And so, but what people see is the outcome at the end of that. Yeah. They say, "Oh, it must be nice, Jonathan. You get to stay at the Ritz-Carlton." I said, "Well, it's not really that. That doesn't matter. Or it must be nice that you get to get this great deal and you're making all this money." And I'm like, that's not it. It's not travel. It's that journey. Yeah. The money part, like, no, you have to have certain alignment first. You have to have alignment, and that first has to be there. The money part will follow. Yeah. And if you don't have that spiritual alignment, then you can have all the money and you're going to be unhappy. So you have to have certain alignment. And that's super key. And when I do all this, I'm saying, okay, well, yeah, we're going to be successful financially if that's the one category you want to look at it. And the outcome of all these touch points and is a journey. And looking back, I think that's fascinating how that worked itself out. Like you have to look at it that way. And that's another aspect of the business development cycle of being an entrepreneur is the tolerance or the appetite for that. Like there's going to be a lot of what most people would consider rejection. Like that person never responded to me. They're this or they're that. There's moments of that I get. Sure. I think like, why is that person not? But you got to slow down and say, wait a second. They might be going through something right now. Yeah. You're busy. They're busy people. And just let it be. Like, you know, it's very fascinating. So a lot of being an entrepreneur it's not a science. It's really an art. And I've relished in that. It's fascinating when I think about that, like that journey. And I'm still on this journey. Like this business that we're talking, this new business, this security education, we're still at the early stages. The company recently launched. I mean, we've been incubating and building the content for the last year or two, but to commercialize it and to build it, a sales channel, like we're just starting that journey and we're barely scratching the surface in Japan. Like the number of customers that we have now is so few. I'm saying that publicly. Yeah. But that means there's so much growth and opportunity there. And we're prepared because we've really did our research and we're open to iterating. And that's key too. You have to be open to changing and having the feedback loop back into the development cycle. And we get constructive feedback for certain clients. Sometimes we take it for a grain of salt and we say, okay, we'll put it here. And we want to see if we can validate that by hearing from others. And that whole process is just constantly an evolving one. And it's a...
Well, the advantage of having somebody who's invested in Japan, who understands the culture and speaks Japanese like you, and then wants to build something for Japan to fill a gap that's been left there that other people didn't see. Yeah. Right. And then wanting to make have a positive impact. Yeah. Right. I think too many people think, and maybe this is me projecting, I don't know, too many people think like there's money to be made here. And sure there is, but I think you see a gap that needs to be filled, a need, a desperate need, if you will, of something that's that nobody else has either seen or. A lot of times I think that Japan, it's a big market, but when a global company looks at the Japanese market and says that's 5% of our bottom line, why should we invest? You've taken the completely opposite way of looking at it, which is amazing. So
the opposite, and I have fun doing it. And I love Japan. I enjoy being here. I like so much of it. Yeah, there's a lot of things to criticize, but there's a lot of things to criticize about everything. Everyone can say things, and
no place is perfect. You and I have both traveled a lot, and I can say that no place is perfect. Yeah. Yeah.
You know that utopia, what that means, right? The word, what it means. No place. It doesn't exist. When Sir Thomas More wrote the book Utopia and whatever in the 1600s or something, it really was saying like this doesn't exist. There is no place. Utopia is nowhere. Wow. So.
Like they say, there is no there.
No.
Right? There's only the journey.
The journey.
And it's a fun journey, and I am very honored to be on this journey with you. So.
And here we are, back in Tokyo.
Back in Tokyo, where I was going to say where it all started, but it all started in LA. So.
It did. On what floor? I think we're on. It was like probably the same floor that we're on now.
Yeah, 34th, 35th floor of some office building in downtown LA.
Yeah.
And
we would watch the sunrise.
Yep.
Sounds kind of romantic, doesn't it?
Yeah. And it was just three guys.
Yeah.
Me, you, and another guy, and we would sit there and watch the sunrise and have coffee, and like we would make the first coffee in the morning at the farm, right?
Oh my gosh.
I drank a lot. I still do, but I drink a lot of coffee.
I don't drink any coffee.
That's right. Yeah.
I can't say I never drink
Good for
coffee,
you.
but I very, very rarely
You're very healthy.
ever drink coffee.
Like you haven't gained an ounce since I've met you,
Oh yeah.
or aged a day.
Yeah, it's the early morning sauna.
Ah.
We're talking about health and wellness. That's a whole other podcast we can do about sauna and cold plunging.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
I start my mornings here in Tokyo at about, I think, 6 a.m.
Okay.
And by 6:30, especially here at the Mandarin, they open up a spa. And they have this beautiful sauna. And it's probably the most epic sauna you've ever experienced, because it's a sauna that's not just in wood like most saunas, but one whole section of the sauna is just all glass. So you can see the sun as it's rising, and then Mount Fuji.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm sitting there at 6:45 as the sun is rising.
Yeah.
And then the clouds start to dissipate, and then Mount Fuji starts to appear. And I'm sitting there sweating, and I start my day.
Wow.
So that's how I'll start my day tomorrow morning, or a few hours from now.
Yeah. What time is it now? I should get out of your hair. It's 1:00.
It's 1, and I got my appointment this morning in a few hours with the sauna and the Mount Fuji.
Alrighty. And I have an appointment with my bed.
Okay.
As soon as I can get home and get showered, yeah. So hey, it's been a blast. I always appreciate you know.
We got to do part 2.
Yes.
Right. We can do this without being in the same city, right?
Sure. Yeah, we can do Zoom.
Okay.
Yep. I prefer face to face.
I agree. Yeah.
But Zoom works or whatever. So let's do it again. This is just part 1. This is just the beginning. So like, there's so much more going on.
Oh, there's so many different conversations that we could have gone down.
Yeah, it's hard for me sometimes because, and I know you're very focused on cybersecurity, but there's so many other directions we could go with.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So. Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of interest in, like, I cook. I told you about the sauna. There's so many things I'm very fascinated in.
Yep. So. Fascinated by like I've recently got into intermittent fasting, and I was bragging to somebody like, I had one meal today, and somebody said, I've been doing that for like 6 years. Like, I've got this almost evangelical attitude about it. It's like, I just discovered it, and every day I talk to them, and you're very low cal, right? And a very healthy eater. And I remember when we worked in LA together, and I would have breakfast, and then I would come into the firm, and then they had donuts on, what was it, Thursdays or something. And this other guy and I would go and raid the donuts, and then about 11:30, I'm like, is it time for lunch yet? And I'd look over at you, and you're like just sitting there sipping some water or something. And then about noon, I'm like, Jonathan, should we go get some juice? You're like, just a second. And then about 1:00, dude, you want to get some juice? Like, oh yeah, I'm almost ready. Let me finish a couple things. And then like 1:30 comes, and 2:00 comes, and you don't even look hungry. I'm like, what is up with this guy? Does he ever eat? And I noticed with less junk food in my diet, and now pretty much none, because I'm doing 75 hard, I don't get as hungry. Like, I cut out the processed food, and only things I can identify, nothing from a can or a box, right? And then the next day, I wake up, I'm not hungry. It's like, this is new. So that's why I'm all like excited about it. Like, wow, so cool, But then other friends like you who've done it for years is like, yeah, that's what I do.
It's a work in progress. I'm learning. Like, a lot of my dietary habits of years ago have evolved and changed. I'm always learning. Learning about grass-fed beef and seed oils.
Yeah, that was a new one for me recently.
So there's so many things that if you focus in on you stay one, like we were talking about alignment. Like if you want to stay in alignment, it's also in alignment with nature. Like the sun rises and it sets. You want to get that early morning sun, the sunshine, and the vitamin D from the early morning. And then when it sets, you want to get, so if you want the ideal sun, you get that in alignment with the rising sun and then the setting sun.
Are you an Andrew Huberman fan?
Yeah, I listen to a lot of his podcasts. It's good. I mean, they talk a lot about things like that and
early morning sun.
Right. There's so many different things. Really, and a lot of things are actually is free. When you think about like health and wellness, oftentimes a lot of it is free. It's out there in the world and you just need to just embrace it.
Isn't that crazy?
It's amazing. Yeah.
We have friends and one time I'd love to take you there. We have friends who have a tiny house, actually a couple in Izu. And probably one of the best sleeps I've ever had in recent years was, I think in the spring, we stayed there, left the windows open, and, crashed. Wake up in the morning and it felt like $1 million. Can hear the birds chirping.
Yeah.
And there's a stream, you hear the little trickle. And I tell you what, if I could have moved there that day, I'd have done it.
So you get to do a lot of grounding. You get to be with the soil, like the earth. That's another thing. Like
grounding, yes.
As much as I enjoy this Mandarin Oriental, I'm so removed from the ground. I mean, I'm 34 floors up, and that's another thing with today's technology is we're so removed from nature.
Yeah.
And being in the city, in Tokyo or wherever city, we tend to be removed from that. We're all connected to all these things, but we're actually, going back to that word connected, we're not connected. We're connected, but we're so disconnected.
Yeah.
Like, when do we just go and grab soil and dirt and just sand and just sit in it, put your foot in it?
Yeah. Or grass.
Or
touch a tree.
Mm-hmm.
I make it a point when I'm in the park to just go up and put my hand on the tree. And you feel different. There's a different energy. It's just different, I was telling my brother last thing, and I'll let you close out with some closing thoughts. But I was telling my brother, and he lives in Scandinavia, and I was telling my brother that I had done a New Year's cold plunge in the ocean. He said, "Oh yeah, we have some people in Europe who do that too." I said, "Really? Like for New Year's?" He said, "No, every morning." It's just like me and my intermittent fasting. It's like, I only had one meal today,
So we've been doing that for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
You say, oh.
Yeah, okay.
But that's good. I mean, the thing is, it's not about judgments. And
that's right.
We all learn in different
cycles.
And so I think when we learn that this is so good for you and so such a wonderful thing can happen to your body when you're going through those kinds of these are like good kinds of stresses, right? Like the heat and then the cold.
Well, and I think too, when you discover it for yourself, it's more meaningful, right? If somebody said like, "Oh, you should go jump in the ocean when it's cold on New Year's Day," or "You should take a cold plunge," or "You should, you need to look at the sunlight in the morning," like that's cool. And if I do it, it's like, okay, oh yeah, a great podcast told me I should do that, and I did it, and it was cool. But if you discover it for yourself, like, wow, that was amazing. I can't wait to do that again.
Yeah.
So awesome. Any final thoughts? And how can people get a hold of you to learn more about cybersecurity training?
I don't use a ton of social media.
I noticed.
Except for LinkedIn.
Okay.
That I do. And all of us do. Our entire team uses it. And I'd say from business purposes, I would implore that we all use it a lot. I've made so many great connections on LinkedIn. We've had great business leads lead to business opportunities. So they can reach me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
They can find me, Jonathan Rossi. They can look for Saya If you do a search, they'll find something that we've published, an event that we're produced, and then it'll eventually connect back to me or this podcast.
Mm-hmm. And I'll put it in the show notes too.
Yeah.
So, well, thanks a million. It's been fun.
Oh, it's just, we can probably go until the morning and watch the sun rise, but that won't be good because this trip to Japan has been great. It's just that my time schedule, because right now it's, I think, probably midday back home. And so I'm getting a lot of emails and calls, and I don't know if you can catch all the pings.
But I see the screen light up.
Yeah, and I'm supposed to go to bed right now, but then I'm getting calls and clients engaging with us and saying all these things, but I need to go to bed.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing about traveling to the other side of the planet.
Right.
Is this. It interrupts that flow, that alignment again, because you want to be going to sleep when the sun is setting and then getting up when the sun is rising.
Yep.
But it's hard to do that when my body still is on a circadian rhythm of California or the US.
Yeah.
And then I come here and I have to switch, it's like 16, 17 hour difference. And then in a few days I go back and I have to go backwards again. And so, I mean, there's ways that I can adjust. There's lots of good kind of hacks out there.
Yeah. Jet lag is real though,
Yeah.
Jet lag is real. And I find it easier to come from LA to Tokyo than Tokyo to LA.
Oh.
Yeah. I always took a night flight. Singapore Air was great. They're really good, and you land here, you go to sleep that night, you wake up the next day and go to work. When I go to America, I have a hard time adjusting.
Oh, yeah.
For some reason.
Well, you end up having one long day.
A very long day.
Right? Because you essentially have that day twice.
Yeah.
Because when you land in the States, you have that day again. So if you go to sleep when you get there, then you're in some ways extending that jet lag. And because you leave, like my flight leaves in the evening on Singapore Airlines around 5 or 6 p.m.
Okay.
And then I land in LA, I think it's like 11 a.m. that same day. And so then what do? Like, do I go to sleep? No, because if I go to bed, what am I going to do? I'm going to wake up at 8 or 9 p.m.
Yeah.
Or am I going to be able to sleep all the way until like 6 a.m. the next day? It's probably not likely.
Or you power through.
Or you stay up all day.
Yep.
But you had a flight and you landed, and that day was supposed to be over, but then you land and now you're starting another day. And so it's a little tricky. Yeah. And for me, it's a lot, because once I get there, I have the family and have the kids, so I can't say, I'm going to go to sleep. Like, no, it's playtime.
For them, it is. Yeah, Daddy's finally home.
Yeah, let's go and have fun. Let's go run around. And so I just took an 11-hour flight, and I haven't slept. I had this whole day, and it's like a second day again. And no, let's go play. And I'm like, all right, let's go. So
it's a different date.
Yeah.
Or it's the same date. It's like the time change is difficult enough when you're here and your family calls you, but it's also a different date. So a lot of times, like when it turned to 2023, I told my family, like, hey, you're going to love 2023. I've already been there.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Oh, I want to leave with Saya is the name of my daughter. That you don't know. I don't think maybe you do know.
I might have known that. Yeah.
Yeah. So she was born, and she was here during one of our events that we had a few years ago in Japan.
Okay.
And that was part of our exploratory, learning and researching about cybersecurity. And then she was there. She was very young at that time. She's still very young.
I met her. We met at
you have
Shinjuku Gyoen, the park.
Yeah,
it was cherry blossom
season. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's her.
And that was the first time I met your wife, because when I met you, you were single.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
And Saya is her. I mean, her. I mean, the company people know Saya, and they go, "What is Saya? I don't understand."
It's a cool name.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's a nice. It has a lot of different meaning in different countries. Here in Japan, it's a name of a girl's name, right?
Yeah.
But in other countries, it means like, I think I might be wrong, like light, or like in India, Singapore, they all have. I think it means Mai and Malaysia. But nonetheless, it's a very nice sounding word.
It kind of rolls off the tongue.
So
Saya. And I think it's easy for a lot of people to say it. It's there are a lot of Japanese brands that people say wrong, but that's another podcast or maybe a YouTube video. But Saya is a very easy word to remember. It's got a pleasant sound. There's no like hard consonants. It's Saya. Yeah.
One word.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, nice.
Sounds good.
Saya is the company, and I'll put a link in the description of this podcast, and people can find you and
and come out to Japan.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna have another summit. Actually, our next event is in California.
Okay.
So Tracy, if you want to come out to it, it's in March.
Okay.
In Monterey.
Okay. Monterey, California.
Yeah, Monterey. And then I should be back here again after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that a summit or a business meeting or what?
All of the above. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm putting together, as we speak, a couple of events here in Japan. So I'm going to be doing something. I'm talking to a couple of people.
And I should mention, and we're both getting tired, but I should mention you put on like first class events too.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about that. Like
those are amazing.
Yeah,
every single event has been amazing.
Yeah, I mean, we always make sure that the events are experiences. So we call them retreats in the U.S.
Yeah,
and we always put them at resorts, 5-star resorts, and people come and bring their families. We have cooking. We have outings where people get to go and do things and get to bond and break bread.
Yeah,
and it's the same thing here in Tokyo.
Important.
Like that's why we host it here at the Mandarin Oriental.
Yeah. It's first class.
Yeah. It's a true first class experience, and people have a good time. And I get the question sometimes. I remember one guy came up to me and said, "Who pays for this?" And I wasn't sure what to say to him. I thought, I think I know the guy. I mean, he's a very generous person. Who pays for that? I mean, I remember he turned to me. He was like he's like, I don't get it. Like I said, I don't either. I don't know. Yeah.
But we were talking about this when we first met today in the lobby or at the restaurant, and we were talking about aligning yourself and and the first class accommodations and how important it is to put that energy out there, And so I think when people think of Saya and they think of you, they think of a first class event rather than we had paper plates and,
No, we don't look at things from a mindset of scarcity. It's an abundance, growth mindset.
Yeah.
And that's so important. And it's challenging because sometimes you have to worry about there are a lot of takers out there too. Right?
They exist.
So it's a balance. Like you can do events, and because you do end up getting a few people over the years that we've met who are disruptive at some of the events because we open it up and we don't necessarily charge people. We make it a fun, inclusive space. But with that comes also certain types that take advantage of that. So, but no, I usually just let it be. Because at the end of the day, when you're working with abundance and the growth mindset, it doesn't really matter. Like, it's okay. Because eventually they just fade away.
Yeah.
And the right people at the right alignment come together.
Yep.
And opportunities flourish from that.
Yeah.
Because one of the themes in that last event that we did was about thriving. I talked about the theme of thriving. Like we come here together at this hotel, this event, to help each other, to thrive.
Yeah.
There's business opportunities to be had. There's people looking for work, then we can connect. There's so many people here coming for different things, and I feel great to connect all the people.
Yeah.
And with that kind of abundance mindset and helping and giving, we receive a lot too. So it's a good interplay between having this posture of giving. And that's another thing I always like to focus on. Like when you have a mindset that's an abundant mindset, you're always giving. You're giving, but you're always in this place where it's not where you're thinking, I want to take, and what can I get out of this? It's working to provide and facilitate. And so I've learned as I do more of that, the more actually wealth accumulates. Like you end up just all growing and becoming more abundant together. So
it's a good way to do it.
So the events are fun spaces for that.
Yeah. They're always first class. So
yeah, they're fun. I enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, I enjoyed this podcast, man. This just conversation.
Yeah, we try to end it. We keep going and going.
I know.
Right?
Like 15 minutes ago, I said one more thing, and I'll let you close. Like,
yeah, I won't say anything anymore.
All right, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy.
All right, buddy.
All right.